The Dice Tower, episode 539, Beverages, Builders, and Bunnies.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. In today's show, Mandy and I talk about the challenges of being monks brewing beer, our Picasso-like talents, and we'll answer some questions from you. I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson. So, lots going on this week and the previous weeks. The Dice Tower Kickstarter is killing it.
Yeah, it's been so fun and stressful to watch it.
I know. I love when I go on. I'm like, oh my goodness, I feel so touched. Someone wants to play a game with me at Origins. Yahoo.
That's pretty amazing. It's incredibly flattering, very humbling, and kind of nerve-wracking. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to be like, do you want to win the game? Do you want to let this person win the game? Like, how do you do? I don't know the etiquette. I don't know the etiquette. That's what it comes down to.
Well, my win to loss ratio, it's staggering. So I win probably maybe 1 out of like a million. So there's a good chance you will win, but there's a very good chance that you'll have fun. So I think there's also the PAX levels. I think Sam has a level. I think my level. I feel that's new. I feel Tom snuck that in there.
That sneaky old Tom. What's he doing in there?
I know, right? But hey, it's PAX, playing some games, you can't go wrong. So
yeah, it's going to be wrapping up pretty soon, really. We're getting into the back half of the campaign. And as we've talked about before, if you've got a chance to check it out and support the Dice Tower financially for 2018, awesome. Thank you so much. And if you don't have that opportunity this year, that's cool too. We'll still be here making podcasts and video content for you and hopefully enjoy. And feel free to drop us questions or chat with us online and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So keep it going. I think there's like a week or so left. So, or maybe even more than that, a couple weeks left. We can do more and provide more for everyone listening to our stuff. So on a side note here, Suzanne, you've been a busy bee. Where were you not too long ago?
I got to go to OrcaCon up here in Bellevue, Washington, in Washington State. OrcaCon is, I gotta say, I had such a fabulous time. It is really gameplay oriented. They have a lot of RPG activity. They have a lot of board games. Their library is okay, but just a ton of people were there, totally focused on gameplay. And, people brought their own games and they had wonderful signs on the tables. They went beyond the players needed thing. They had these players needed, and then they had these banners that would let you say how many players you needed and what type of game it was. It was really cool system. And the other thing, because of course this is the Dice Tower podcast, so we have to talk about the food. I think it's in our contract, right?
I feel that's like one of Tom's rules.
Definitely. And one of the coolest things is that it's at a hotel. It was hosted at a hotel in Bellevue, Washington, and it's kind of off on the side. There's basically no places to eat there except for whatever's in the hotel. So they brought in food trucks every day. And so every day there were different food trucks right outside in the parking lot that you could walk up to. And the food was great. And it was, I had beignets and I had pie and I had king cake and I had fried noodles. And I'm like, that's how you do a convention food show.
It sounds like gourmet food trucks. Ooh.
Yeah, it was excellent. But, one of the things I really love about OrcaCon is just the atmosphere. It was very friendly, very open. OrcaCon was founded with kind of at its root, the principles of being inclusive and being diverse. So the panels were full of all sorts of different people talking about all sorts of different topics in gaming. And that was so exciting. The tone, the atmosphere, the feel of the room, everything was just really happy and upbeat and relaxed. And I had an amazing time. I think the Northwest is really blessed to have a ton of gamers and game companies and stuff up here. So there were a bunch of content creators that were there, a bunch of game designers and publishers that were there showing off their good stuff. So OrcaCon, man, if you've ever got the chance to attend up here in Bellevue, Washington, I highly recommend it. It was just gaming goodness.
I know I've been invited a couple times. It didn't work out unfortunately, with my schedule this year, definitely one on my list that I'd like to check out. So I'm glad you gave us a few more details about it.
Yeah, and you can come stay with me.
Yahoo! Oh, see, that we can have like a gaming at OrcaCon and then like the gaming after.
Non-stop. Now, Mandy, I know you're gonna die if you don't tell me all about this other thing you're doing that has nothing to do with games.
Okay, so it doesn't have to do with games, but it's fine. Because I know there are people listening that'll be like, yes, absolutely, you need to talk about this. So my bestie decides to give me a call. And she says, okay, Mandy, I totally get the con thing because a lot of my friends are not gamers. So they don't generally visit cons and things like that. She goes, you'll never guess who's coming into town. Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles. So anybody who knows will know that these are the two main characters from Supernatural. So I am going to a Supernatural con in April with my best friend, and she is going crazy. She legitimately is like, okay, I need to get some, like, I gotta get autographs. And I think she spent it's like $500 or something to that effect.
What?
Oh, it's crazy. Like, I'm already spending $200 just going. And I'm like,
what?
I love them. I love the show. That's good enough for me. I can see you from a distance. Hey, how's it going? Do a little air fist pump from a very far distance and I'm good. She needs the whole shebang. So anyway, I just had to share it. I'm excited, but I think she's going a little overboard there, but I get it.
Well, I'm glad that you're going, and I hope you have a wonderful time. I've seen the show before. I watched the first couple of seasons and really thought it was fun. But dang, woman, do you know how many games you could buy with that money? I just couldn't do it. Mm-mm.
But here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to tie it into games. I'm going to bring a couple of small games that I will provide her to give to them and say, hey, my friend's into games and she does stuff with games and it's cool. And just, present them. She can present those games to them.
Is there a card or board game based on Supernatural?
It's funny you say that. I was thinking about that and I don't know if there is.
Huh.
I feel like we should know this.
I do. I mean, I'm not a super fan, but I mean, there's Supernatural Trivial Pursuit. So
I feel like this is something that's either happening or exists. Anyway, people listen to the podcast, I'm sure will let us know. They know where to find us, social media, wherever, and let us find out more about this Supernatural board game. Because if that's a thing, then of course I'm going to have to bring it. So,
oh my goodness. Well, contrary to popular belief, this is not a Supernatural fan cast. But it is a board gaming and card game podcast. So let's talk about some games that we've been playing.
Carry on my wayward son. There'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more.
All right, so now let's jump into games played. Well, not gonna lie, I've had a light week, but that's because I've got a whole bunch of big ones coming up for the next podcast. Woo! So let us start with Dream On. Dream On! Sorry, that was my really terrible...
You have to, you have to sing that song, don't you?
It just, I can't help it. So there you go. It was bad, but necessary. So Dream On was designed by Alexandre Droit and Julien Plotier, and the artist is Valentina Moscon, published by Simon, and the price is about $16 US. I actually had a difficult time finding this on Canadian websites, so I'm just not sure if it's available here. So Dream On, it's a collective storytelling game, which, well, we're trying to create a dream together. So using these dream cards, we are timed. We have 2 minutes to create a dream story. So when the timer runs out, you have to remember what happened in the dream and exactly the order that it happened. So you can get help from your teammates when we're trying to retell the dream, but you do get points, bigger points, if you can remember on your own. So I think if you remember on your own, it's plus 2 points. If you get assistance, it's +1. But if someone yells out the answer, that's the answer you take, even if it's wrong. And wrong answers, I think, are -1 or 2. I think it's -1 if I'm not mistaken. Wait. No, incorrect is -2. I remember being a lot. So basically, you go around until all the cards are done and you've told the entire story. And then basically you tally up all the cards under column +1, +2, and -2 and see what your final score is. It plays relatively quickly. Honestly, looking at it at first, I said, oh boy, The art didn't initially appeal to me on the box. So some of the cards inside the box were actually quite nice, but it was just, it didn't draw me. And I'm not a huge party game person. So I was like, oh, is this going to be one of these like tacky, terrible party games? But we played and had a really good time. Now, to be fair, I also was taught the game by Mr. Eric Lang. So we were at Oh, I know. You don't know Eric Lang? I don't know. He's kind of a thing. So Eric was great, and he was so excited because this is a game he was excited about. So, and this is one that he had kind of, said, Simon, hey, check this out. And so he taught it to us. We had a great time. We kind of played a slight variance to the game because I think you have to draw cards in the game. But when Eric showed us, he's like, well, we're just going to use the deck and pass it around. So, I mean, there are rules, but we played it a little differently and still had a really good time with it. I actually was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. And I have a terrible memory, but I like the fact that you can get help. So you're not just out there by yourself feeling awkward or terrible if you don't remember.
Okay. Because I am awful at memory games. And memory is one of my least favorite mechanisms in games because of that.
Right.
But getting help sounds good. And you see, whereas you were like, the art didn't draw you in, I saw the box of Dream On and I thought, oh, this looks interesting.
Okay.
So, it's kind of that pull of like, okay, I think it looks interesting, but then if it's got a memory element, it may be rough on me. I mean, I may still really have fun, but I may stink at it.
Well, I think we played it like at least 3 times in a row. Like and some of the things that people yelled out, you're like, seriously? Like, how did you get that? Look at the card. Like, okay, you know what? It's good because you'll remember it when it's coming back to retelling the story because you don't see the cards, right? You're having to remember it in order and then flip the card to see if you got it right. The art for me it was really busy and I don't know, it didn't draw me in. I don't know how to explain it. And I'm usually one for a lot of color and it's just something about the art just didn't say to me, hey, this game is really good, try me.
Okay. Well, but you said that about Smile too, that we talked about in our last episode, that when you first looked at it, you're kind of skeptical, but then you end up enjoying it.
Yeah, exactly. So I try not to judge it by the way it looks. I mean, yeah, you kind of, but we tried it, and honestly, we had a really good time playing it. It played really quickly, and I feel my biggest thing with memory games is that people feel put on the spot or people feel bad about themselves for not remembering. I'm one of those people. I feel like, hockey. Anybody? Well, sorry, I'm Canadian. I do watch hockey, and my brothers, when we were younger, would always make me be the goalie. And that is the worst thing ever because they're like, oh, it's fine. Don't worry. If you let some goals in, it's okay. That's a lie. Anytime you let goals in as the goalie, your team hates you and gets angry and yells at you. And that's how I feel about memory games. So I don't like being the goalie. I like the fact that you have good defense here. So Dream On. I enjoyed it. You should check it out.
Oh, that's great. That's very cool. I'll have to try it at a convention or something soon because it sounds like it would be fun to it is a party game, right? So it sounds like it would be fun for that environment.
And you need to get Eric Lang to teach it too.
Oh, okay, I'll get right on that.
That's a requirement.
Thanks for the tip. Well, along maybe the storytelling lines at OrcaCon, I got to play Legacy of Dragonholt, which I have to say was not on my radar at all. This is from Fantasy Flight Games, which, I really appreciate and respect what Fantasy Flight does. I like, games like Star Wars Destiny. I'm not into a lot of the bigger board games, the Star Wars series. While I love Star Wars, it's just too much. I can't keep up with things like X-Wing or things like that. But I got to play Legacy of Dragonholt, their new RPG system called the Oracle system at OrcaCon. So this is designed by Nikki Valens and the artist is Anna Christensen. And I think it goes for about $60 US, which may sound like a lot. I don't have a great scale for RPG experiences, to be honest. So I played it and I went and I bought it the next day.
What?
Yeah,
really?
I did. And I have played some RPGs like D&D 5th and a little bit of Pathfinder, and I really, really enjoyed D&D 5th edition. But I struggled to stick with a group just because scheduling issues, that can be tough. And then I'm not a GM. I'm not built for that. It's not my skill set.
Right.
And so, trying to find the right group, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there are a lot of just barriers to me getting into an RPG, which is a shame because I enjoyed it. But man, Legacy of Dragonholt. So get this. It is a choose your own adventure RPG.
Oh, wait now.
That requires no GM. It's GM-less. So whoever is reading the book or whatever, you do it collectively as a group. It doesn't require anybody running it or managing it because, it's a preset adventure or adventure series. There's like at least 6 adventures in the box itself. So yeah, you're paying $60, but you're getting 6 full adventures in that box for that. And I think they're replayable to some degree on top of that because of the choose your own adventure element. So it's this Oracle system, and I'm so excited it's a system because I want more of this stuff. And basically, they've written a story, a fantasy adventure. It's definitely traditional fantasy with, orcs and trolls and goblins and things like that. And you go on an adventure, you go on a journey, you have missions that you're trying to complete or an accomplishment or a destination that you're trying to get to. You can build your own character, or the way we played is we just played with out-of-the-can characters that the game provided you, and I had a blast with that. And, these characters have different attributes like agility or archery, strength, dexterity, whatever, like cunning, deception, all those kinds of attributes. And then they have called stamina points instead of life. The system is so dead simple. You read like 2 pages of rules and you're in it, because basically you read this story and you hit a point in the story where a decision or a choice has to be made. And that is given to you in a multiple choice fashion. And what happens, at least in our group, is that we end up talking, okay, well, what do you want to do here? What does this sound like? Oh, you're at a fork in the road and, you could climb over this log, or you could climb this tree to get a better viewpoint, or there's a rabbit trail to the right, that you think you could maybe sneak through. And what do you do? And so we're talking about, well, I have dexterity and agility, so I can climb that tree really easily and get a purview, or, my character is just impatient and doesn't want to wait and is a charging kind of character. So let's just climb over that log and get going, right? We had this dialogue, but ultimately there's an action system that really ensures everybody gets a turn and everybody gets a chance to shine, because you can kibitz a little bit, but then ultimately somebody's like, who's going to make the decision? Who's going to take that action? And you have an action token, you just flip it over and you've used it. You cannot control another action until everybody's taken an action, and then you all get your action back.
Oh, neat.
So everybody gets a turn, you still feel like you're collaborating, but everybody has a chance. And I loved how that worked. I love the simplicity of that. And you might end up in a situation where I've used my turn, my action, and then you encounter something and it's like, oh, well, if you have deception, you get to do this thing. And I'm the only character that had deception and I cannot do it. Right. So then you have to tell the story about, it just worked. Now, arguably, part of the enjoyment I had is I actually, there's a podcast called Boards Alive.
Oh, yeah, I know this one.
Wonderful podcast. Yeah, out of Canada. Right?
I was going to say they're Canadian. I know them.
Quentin and Aaron, great people. And Aaron's wife, Lindsay, they do podcast episodes called Date Night. And Lindsay ran it for us. Now, she had done it, but she loved it so much. She's like, I'll run it for you. I'm like, great. Oh my gosh, this woman was amazing. She was doing voices and gestures and immersed you so much into the story. It was incredibly dynamic and entertaining and engaging. And keep in mind, it was entertaining, engaging, and dynamic, and it was still a quote-unquote canned choose your adventure experience, but it still had so much life to it. Now, maybe a lot of that was Lindsay, but the structure of the system still allowed for that, which was awesome.
Right.
And as to that replayability thing that I mentioned earlier, it is a choose your adventure. So, you go down path A, I choose this. Well, you could theoretically replay it and choose a different path the next time you go through. So arguably, that's some replayability. It has an interesting little time stories mechanism too, where as you're going through the story will tell you mark down item Z51. And so you just keep this little list of items or stuff in codes, like Z51, X12, whatever. And then you'll get to a story point and it's like, if you have item Z51, do this. If you don't have this item, do that.
Oh, neat. So this is bringing back memories for me. So
it was. I had so much darn fun. So my plan is I've got this system and I'm actually going to do it with my family, with my kids. You don't need a tabletop. There's no miniatures. It's just a book. You can sit on the sofa, chill out, read this interactive story, and go on this adventure together. You do have character sheets, but that's it. Legacy of Dragonholt, a complete surprise to me, a complete delight. I loved it. So there you go. If you're looking for an RPG that you can play really simply or an RPG-like experience, this is it.
So time-wise, how much time dedicated to this. I mean, I used to play RPGs a lot with my brothers when I was younger, but honestly, it's been a long time. I was just so busy, and finding the time to do any types of these games, it's so hard.
We played the intro scenario in about probably just over an hour.
Oh my gosh, that's not long at all.
No, it didn't feel like that. I mean, it was just completely engrossing, and the structure of it is you can totally put it down when you're done. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, you don't have a tabletop full of maps that you've been doing and stuff like that. You just have a book and some character sheets. Tuck the character sheets in your place in the book, put it away, come back to it later.
Sounds like my kind of RPG. Like, I mean, as in, according to my time constraints, it would work nicely.
Sure, absolutely.
Was this a Kickstarter?
No, it's Fantasy Flight.
Yeah, I know it's Fantasy. Yeah, okay, that's right. They generally don't, but that's interesting. I know I've seen it. I'm just trying to remember where I had seen it, and somebody else had said something positive about it as well. So anyway, it's escaping me right now.
And that person is right.
So there you go. Another one to add to the list. Actually, that sounds very interesting. I'd love to give that a go. My next one is one we've both played, we've talked about. So, well, let's start off. We like it. If you listen to the podcast, we like it. Heaven and Ale, designed by Michael Kiesling and Andreas Schmidt. The artist is Christian Fiore and published by Plan B Games, but I think initially it was Eggerspiel.
No, it's actually going to be Eggerspiel. It's interesting. Yeah, it's exciting because Plan B acquired Eggerspiel. And so I think some people think it's going to come out under Plan B. And Plan B is doing this whole thing with another imprint.
This was my question. I was wondering about this.
I think Eggerspiel is going to be growing its brand over here in the U.S., in North America.
Oh.
And so when people are ready to go and buy this off the shelf, it will be available in U.S. and Canada. And it's going to be available under Eggerspiel.
Well, that makes more sense because I was chatting with a friend and we were wondering, like, when production happens, are they going to be changing all the boxes? Anyway, that explains so much. Thank you for letting me know that, and everybody
else.
So this is 68 Canadian and 50 US. But I think in Canada, again, it's one of those ones that are going to be I think a bit harder to get right now, but soon. I think it's this month. Is it not launching this month?
It's coming up very, very soon. Yeah. So everybody
very
listening
soon.
to this, it may not be in your shops now, but it's going to be fully available in retail.
So in Heaven and Ale, well, as the title suggests, it's beer related. We're getting some beer done. So it takes place over several rounds. And again, this is dependent on player count. So I think I've played it at 2, 3. Actually, I think I've played it at all player counts now. And you're competing with your opponents for resource tiles and monk tiles, which you're going to place on your board either. Okay. And I have to get this right. Wait. I can't. What is it? The shady side or the sunny? I always want to say the dark side. And then somebody says some kind of like Star Wars joke. That I don't get.
That goes down the wrong path.
I don't watch a lot of. I mean, I watch it, but I don't know the inside scoop. I digress. So basically, you're trying to acquire these resources on the board and place them on either the sunny side, which will cost you more. It actually costs you double, or placing it on the shady side, which will be the cost that is actually stipulated. When you're moving on the board, you can only move your figure forward. So if you go forward and you're like, oh, I might come back and get that on my next turn. No. You have to keep going forward. So I found in the first round, a lot of people wanted to pick up a lot on the way. You're taking your time, but I'm like, stuff gets really expensive and money doesn't come easily in this game.
Oh, the economy is so tight.
It's pretty tight. So I remember I have to say, we played it wrong at one point and we had so much money. I'm like, we are definitely doing something wrong. So eventually, we figured it out, and it made much more sense. So on these resource spaces, if you land on a space, you need to be able to do the action. So if you land where there are resource tiles, you have to get the resource tile. Now, keep in mind that over several rounds, there will be multiple tiles there that you can acquire. So you can take 1, 2, but you need to take a minimum 1. The reason why you want to place this on your board is because on the side of your board, you have your different resources. What is it? Help me out here. So there's like water. I think they have hops,
wheat.
Yeah. So they have all the things that makings of beer. And the thing is, when you have monk tiles, which you can also acquire, trigger and activate is a bit of an issue in this rule book. But when you place one of the monks beside these tiles, for example, you can activate those tiles, and depending on where it's placed on the board, either on the sunny or shady side, will depend on what you acquire. So if it's on, for example, on the sunny side of the board, you're going to get the actual resource that it's adjacent to, and you're going to move your marker up on the side of your board, versus if it's on the shady side, you're getting money if it's triggered with activated with a monk. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that actually is something that's a problem in the rulebook. They go back and forth, but they are different. You can also move your beer crafter. Am I saying that correctly? Brewmaster. Am I thinking of a game now? But you're going to move your Brewmaster, and you want to move your Brewmaster and all your tokens on the side for your different resources as high as possible because this affects your scoring. You have other ways to acquire resources and money in the game by, on the resource board, picking up these kind of purple
Scoring tokens?
Scoring, yeah, they're like tokens, and they can be placed on the side of your board when you've completed that task. So for example, if you've acquired a certain type of monk on your board, you can then use one of these purple tokens to place on that monk, and then it activates all the monks on your board. So if they're adjacent to any resource, it will activate anything adjacent to it, or trigger, anything adjacent to it. Once you complete those, you have cards that you can place beside them, and they give you benefits like money or moving your, resource cubes up on the track. I think I've covered. Oh, yes. Lastly, you have these, my gosh, it's late, so my brain isn't working right now.
Barrels?
The barrel. Well, we haven't talked about that yet, but the cities or the enclosures when they close the...
the sheds. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So depending on the number value of the type of resources that surround shed areas that are on the board, so these are like little spaces that basically once you... Oh my goodness, I'm having like the hardest time getting it out. I'm picturing it in my mind and it's not coming out. When you encircle an area, you're going to have a shed, and it's going to be dependent. The number of the shed will be dependent on the value of all the tiles that are circling it. So for example, if you had a value of 8, you would have, I think it's like a tile that's worth 1 potentially. And you basically get to activate 1 tile in that enclosure, and it could be a resource if it's on the lighter side, or it could be money if it's on the darker side. Then you also, in addition to that, get to move your
Brewmaster.
Why do I want to say brewcrafter? Brewmaster. Wow, we should never do these late at night. It allows you to move your Brewmaster, and usually a lower number means you're going to move it more in the game. We also have barrel tiles you can acquire, and these give you bonuses at the end of the game. Something of note here is the scoring. This was weird for me at first because you have to move your resource tokens as far up as possible. The reason why is because all of the scoring happens at the end of the game. Did you find this tricky?
The scoring is one of the most difficult things to explain and to figure out. And it's definitely, in my opinion, something that you have to play the game. You can teach the consolidation and stuff like that up front, but you really have to play the game to get it. It's one of the more tricky systems of scoring. It's a little fiddly, it's a little opaque or obtuse, or another ob word. But once you get it, it's incredibly clever and stressful.
Well, yeah, and this is why. So basically, you want to move your Brewmaster right up there, get your resource right up there, because basically, depending on how far Brewmaster is on the track, that's the ratio that you're going to be using. So you're like, well, what are you talking about? So your pieces or resources that are really far back, they need to meet up with the one that's really far forward. So basically, if you can get up to like a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio, it just means that you have to spend 2 of your higher value to move your lower value up 1. And you do that until they meet. And then depending on where it lands will depend on how many points you're going to get. It's really complicated to explain without actually seeing it. But basically, you want your farthest piece ahead and your lowest piece ahead to meet, and your ratio is better the farther your Brewmaster is ahead.
Yikes.
Yeah, I think I got it all.
Yikes. This is a really difficult game to explain, like in a podcast situation without the board, without moving pieces. This is a heavier game. This has some bite to it. It's delicious. It's so delicious. But it's definitely got a ton going on. I mean, you haven't even touched on a few of the other elements too. Oh,
there's so much I haven't touched on. I'm just kind of giving it over without going, too much into it, but I'm not kidding. This is a game where we're like, okay, yeah, it looks like it's going to be, simple. I was hoping for something a little crunchier, and then you play it and you're like, ooh, I like it, because it really makes you think. You can't afford to pick everything up, but then you don't want to pass something else. You're giving it to your opponents, and they're picking it up and closing things off and getting points. It stressed me out, but I liked it all at the same time.
I think a couple of the standout features are the action track as you go, because you play in, a certain set number of rounds. And as you said, you go around this track in one direction. If somebody's played Francis Drake, they may be familiar with this single direction action thing where you can take every action you want to. But once you go past it, you can never go back. And you really hit it, Mandy. Early in the game, not maybe as big of a deal as you're trying to establish things.
Absolutely.
But by the back half of the game, that is a hard decision because there's that one token out there that you really, really need, but it's going to make you skip this other critical area. And those are great tough decisions that you have to make. The decision about how you manage your economy, whether you put that great tile, because your score is based, you want to get all your resource tokens and your brewmaster as high up this track as you can go. If you can max out the brewmaster and at least one resource, that's best. But so you have to move these resource tokens, but you have to have money to buy resources. So planting these things oh my gosh, there's just so many great tense choices. There's multiple directions you can go as far as what you choose to move. It feels strategic. There are these endgame scoring things called barrels that give you bonuses if you hit basically certain in-game achievements, like all of your resources reach a certain point or all of your sunny side of the board are covered up. You can score these barrels. This is definitely one of the, I wouldn't say complaints, but it's something that we've noticed in our plays because all of the scoring barrels are out every game. I could see where randomizing them a little bit would lead to some nice variability in the game. And also, it did create kind of a moment where, because of the way they score, you can get everything that you qualify for when you take the action. Everybody just kind of waits until the end for the most part. I mean, there's some advantage of going earlier and you can steal it from somebody else potentially, but that felt just like there was a missed, I wouldn't call it a negative, but it felt like a missed opportunity. But I gotta say, Heaven and Ale, if I had played this before I did my top 10 of 2017, this would have been pretty high on my top 10. I absolutely love it. I think it's a Euro with a theme. I think the theme is fairly pasted on, but mini Euros are. That's fine by me. I love it anyway. I love the brain burn this gives me. We're sitting around the table, gnashing our teeth and moaning and groaning and complaining about people taking the spots we want. Competition to get monks is huge. There's a lot of fighting over monks in this game. I'll just say that.
Well, monks are pretty good. I mean, come on, they trigger
powerful.
Things around them, and then it's great.
So if you have been looking for a nice meteor Euro, I can't recommend Heaven and Ale high enough. It was fabulous. I love this game.
It was a pleasant surprise to me. Not that I didn't think I was going to like it, but I remember at Essen, everyone was talking about it, and we're like, what now? Like, it wasn't even on our radar. And then it was like, well, everyone's like, well, haven't you tried it? So we finally got our hands on it, and I'm like, wow, it's really good. I have to say, though, wasn't crazy about it at 2 players.
Certainly, it's one of those games that there's just not as much competition. It scales by round count, but not much else. Honestly, at 4, if you've got 2 hours to invest in playing a game, it's awesome at 4. It's very tense and very tight. At 3, it's very enjoyable and maybe a more relaxing experience.
Yes, that's
but
what
I can see what you're saying about 2.
Yeah, 2 is just, and I've spoken to other people who played it at 2, and it was just, it didn't have that same vibe to me, that tension. 4 is the best. 3 is fine too, but 2 is probably not my favorite. It's not bad. It's just not my favorite for this game.
Sure.
Heaven and Ale, if you haven't tried it out, you should. So of all the games I'm talking about today, this is definitely my favorite.
You have good taste.
Oh, so do you.
Keeping on the beverage track, I wanted to talk about Blend Coffee Lab. For sure, this is one of these little games out of Asia that is hard to get in the West that sometimes I get guff about talking about. But, I love using the Dice Tower to help bring awareness to some of these really great games that you can't get in North America. And, I like to maybe elbow publishers to say, hey, take a look. This deserves some attention as well. So Blend Coffee Lab is one of those games. This is designed by Sashi, who has a publisher, Sashi and Sashi. The artist is Takako Takarai, and it's a card game. This is a trick-taking card game. I won't say what I paid for it because I paid a lot of money to get it out of Japan, out of Tokyo Game Market. I'm sure that when it comes over to the US and North America, that it will be less expensive than what I paid. But I am so glad I paid for it because this is a great game. If you like trick-taking games, you've got to check this out. It's a game about making coffee blends.
Ooh, tell me more.
It's a trick-taking game with a theme. That's great. But actually, I like the theme. I like the theme in general, but I actually thought there were moments where the theme helped the gameplay as well, which was nice. You are making coffee blends, and you can have a light, medium, or dark roast. What that really ultimately means is you have a light cup, a dark cup, and a medium cup that you are working on. Each card can go into one of these cups. And you have a full cup when there's 4 cards. So you have a red, yellow, blue, and green card. If you have a red, yellow, blue, and green card of medium, then you have a perfect cup, Ta-da. That is great. So you're working on building up each of these cups as you go in front of you with the cards that you get by playing the trick-taking game. But to have the cups, and it's the cups that score you points, you got to get the cards. You get the cards through kind of a standard trick-taking game with some really cool twists. First of all, anybody knows, trick-taking games, you have to quote-unquote follow suit. This is almost the opposite, because if a player's played a blue card, you cannot play a blue card. So it's almost like the reverse. You cannot follow suit until you must. So that's all pretty standard. The big twist here is it can change whether a high card wins or a low card wins.
Oh.
And based on this thing called the trend. So sometimes the trend will be high card wins. Great. Then you're playing these cards to win with a high card. And then sometimes it'll be low, and then a low card will do. And basically when you win the trick, it's a little like Honshu or some of these other games where I've won the trick. All I've really won is the right to choose a card to take.
Oh.
Right? So I won the trick. Now I look at the cards that were played in the trick and I pick which one I want to keep for my cup. Which is great. And then whatever card, and not everybody's going to get a card. The loser of the trick, the flat out loser, isn't going to get a card.
Wow.
And that's the card that determines if the next trend is high card wins or low card wins. I know that's a little complex to explain over a podcast, but that creates some really interesting choices when you're taking cards to put into your cups, which is fun. And then you score at the end of 3 rounds. You play 3 rounds. You score each of your cups. And then your final score is actually based on your best score in each of the blends. So my highest value light, medium, and dark roast will win no matter what round they happened in.
Okay.
This also creates some really interesting gameplay because, hey, if I score 60 points in my light roast the first round, guess who doesn't care about light roast cards now? I don't care about them. And it changes the values of cards for me personally, and it changes the way I approach the trick taking, which is so darn cool. It just works. The heart of a trick-taking game is here, but you could almost argue that the forming of the cups is kind of, basically it's tableau building in the form of coffee cup pictures. And that high-low, oh my gosh, it's delightful. It's still just a trick-taking game.
Right.
It plays very, very quickly. It has a way to scale between 3 and 4 players. I gotta say, it plays excellently at both player counts. It's super good. It's super good if you like trick-taking games. And I know a couple of publishers are going to be talking to Sashi about trying to grab it. So I have high hopes that it'll be easy for people to get in the relatively near future. And when it is, you really got to check this one out. It is Blend Coffee Lab.
Yeah, so I'm not a coffee drinker. So when you said the theme, I'm like, oh, coffee. Yay. I'm a tea drinker. I'm all about the tea. But in this case, it totally makes sense from what you're explaining with the game. And I did have a question. The trends, is that kind of go back and forth, or can it be, does it change? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is it always consistently high, then low, then high, then low?
No.
Okay.
So what happens is that when you play the trick and people are taking the cards to put in front of them,
Right.
one person doesn't get a card. Whatever the last card is left on the table,
Okay, that's...
the color of it will determine what the next trend is. So the trend can switch at any point in the game, depending on what's left on the table. There are times when I will be looking at the cards that are left and go, oh, I really want that card, but looking at my hand, I only have high cards. So I really want the trend to stay high card wins.
Absolutely.
So what choice do I make there? And that's awesome.
That sounds real. I mean, I'm a sucker for a trick-taking game, so I'm actually very excited to see who picks this up. Although I do have a publisher in mind, I think that I'll keep that to myself for now, but looking forward to it. So the last game that I'm going to talk about is Tybor de Baumeister, or Tybor the Builder, designed by Alexander Pfister and Dennis Rappel. Artist is Clemens Franz, and it's published by Mayday Games. I don't believe this is available in Canada and the US. I could be incorrect about that. I couldn't locate it. I think it's available off of the Mayday Games website directly. I think I paid it would, I think, equate to about 15 Canadian or so. Tybor de Baumeister, it's set in the world of Longsdale, which, if that sounds familiar, it's because it is. It was seen in Oh My Goods and the expansions from that game. So we had a really good time playing this game. Suzanne, Eric, Stephanie, Eric's wife, and myself, we had various actions for the different cards in the game. Do you remember?
We had different gestures, that's right.
The gestures, like the hat with like the
for
full hand
citizens and soldiers,
citizens.
yeah.
hard to see over a podcast. If you ever see us at a con, we will be more than happy to demonstrate.
Oh, great.
See, Eric and Stephanie are going to be like, what is wrong with you? So during the game, each player receives a hand of 5 multi-purpose cards. So anybody who's played Oh My Goods will know these cards have a variety of things on them that you can use for different parts of the game. So we'll go into that a bit more. Each will have a professional, like a priest, a soldier, and again, playing into the story. So in the game, you start off with, I call it an objective. I know that's not what it's called, but there's a card that basically, the first round, it tells you some of the what the costs are going to be for the building. Now, the buildings have 2 sides. The buildings have I like to say there is a name for it. Do you remember? It's like the one side's a bit more expensive than the other.
Right.
And you can tell just by the color of the house that's on it. It's a bit more highlighted if it's a more expensive.
Yeah, it was like a
building.
basic and advanced. I mean, we didn't come up with any fancy names for it.
Right. And the colors, they're different colored buildings. You have future orange, blue, and so forth. And the amounts of how much each building costs changes every round. Okay. And there's also something that happens depending on the card you choose at the end of the round. So in our case, when I've played it, you had to lose a citizen at the end of the round. So these are things that you have to be cognizant of when you're playing. But during the game, what you're going to do is you're going to choose a card from your hand. You're going to place it face down, and you're actually going to pass your cards. I believe it's to the left. Am I right on that? I think so.
To the right. Wait, buildings go to the left.
Buildings go to the
soldiers
left.
go to the right. Citizens go on top.
Okay, but I mean our hand. When we pass our hand, I think it's I'm trying to remember, to the left when we're drafting.
Oh, I don't know. You pass.
Okay.
You go in a direction.
Long story short, you're passing your cards. You pick one, you're passing your cards. Geez, Suzanne, way to help me out. Way to leave me hanging.
Love you, mean it.
Yeah, no. Okay. So you pass your cards, pick cards. Everyone flips their card up, and this determines what they're going to do. So you have a choice. As Suzanne has said, you could choose to play a citizen, which is going to allow you to get discounts on buildings. And this goes on the top of your kind of set that you have. And if you play it to the right of this main card that you have, that's going to be what your builder. So this is what you're going to use to the fist. This is what you're going to use in order to build. So they have numbers on them, and that's what you would have to discard in order to pay to make a building, which is buildings are placed on the left-hand side of this main card that you have. So what you're trying to do is trying to build, your best, I guess I'm going to say it's a city, but you're trying to build your best tableau, and you're basically going to draft all your cards until you have none left. And this is how that happens in a round. I have to say that by the time we get to the last round, it's rough because a lot of these cards they'll say like you need to have a certain set of something, like you need to have a certain amount of knives in your tableau. If somebody knows that, they're going to try and take that card because, heck, they don't have to play it as a citizen. They can play it as a worker and they can spend it later. They could prevent you from taking it. So, which has happened. And I'm pretty sure it happened in our game a couple of times. But
heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did. So at the end of the game, too, you have to be careful because the buildings do become more expensive. And, you end up having to say, oh my goodness, if I get rid of this worker, then I might not meet this objective here. So I'm going to be losing points. A lot of end game points. It's all end game points, but you want to make sure that you have sets, and that's really what it relies on. And you also are going to get points for your buildings. At the end, basically, at the end of the predetermined number of rounds, you're going to count up all the point values of your building, any kind of sets you had or bonuses, and then see who wins the game. I think I covered it all, and then some.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Nailed it. Hashtag nailed it.
So I did find the rule book not bad, but there were a few things I'm like, I feel like this could have been explained a little better.
I think you're being nice. That rule book was atrocious. I mean, Mandy, I appreciate look, the rule book was a mess. What's a very straightforward gameplay system, just the rule book overcomplicated.
I agree.
It didn't help that there were printing errors, like icons were misaligned. So it'd say, when you have this icon, and then if you had to like scan the book, and then you would see that the icon was actually printed 1 inch above that line, overlaid some other rulebook text. It was not a strong rulebook.
No, I mean, to be fair, you had taught us originally, so by the time I went to play again, I had to refer to the rulebook. Oh, this is not so bad. But yes, reading it for the first time would be a problem. I definitely think
first learner game straight out of the rulebook was a nightmare.
It was, and for such a small game, it shouldn't have been like that. So that was a complaint that I had. The game itself, I thought was fine. I think now, Oh My Goods in this game are different But they do have some similar elements where they're multi-use cards and things like that. I think I still prefer the gameplay of Oh My Goods, but I didn't mind this one. I did like it. Mm-hmm. But it's a like for me.
Okay.
I liked it. Sometimes when I have a game and there's something, the gameplay was fine. There's nothing wrong with the mechanic. I don't know if I felt like it needed something a little bit more to force your hand a bit to do certain things. Maybe I didn't like it at 2. I didn't find 2 was a great number to play this
drafting game at 2 is brutal.
No, it wasn't great. I definitely enjoyed it when we played it at 4, for sure. It definitely seemed a bit more competitive. And I definitely like the fact that it's a small box. I can just throw it in my bag and, we can pull it out and play it as long as somebody knows the rules because, nobody wants to
go through that rule book again. Yeah.
So overall, I enjoyed the game. If you like the whole kind of Oh My Goods, scene and that type of game, I think you will like this. They're different types of games. I actually found this one simpler.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Like much more simple to explain because when I try and explain Oh My Goods, it's fine, but it does have I find it has a bit more, especially that chaining element in Oh My Goods, that trying to explain that to someone can be difficult. So I found in this particular game, the gameplay itself was very straightforward.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What did you think? Because I know you also have played this.
Yeah, I've played it a bunch. And after that first brutal, bless my playgroup. They're so awesome to put up with some of this. I really got into it. I really enjoy it. It is much lighter to me than Oh My Goods, but still very compelling. But I am personally biased. I quite like games that involve cards that have that multi-use. So when you have a card and, I'm I don't know, a competitive player, I guess. So when in drafting games, if I'm in a situation where what I have in my hand, I don't need any of it, but you do and you're next, I'm going to take what you need next. Which I know makes me a very unpleasant person. But what I like about Tybor is when I do that, in a lot of drafting games, I'm just hate drafting. But in Tybor, I'm getting something I can still use. It may not progress my set collection or whatever I'm doing, but I can use it as a builder. I can use it as, there's some value in it. And I really like that element. So for the simplicity, the relative quickness once you understand how to play, the kind of the cool choices that you can make between, do I need this for it's a 7-point builder versus, it has all of these card icons on it that I really need. There's nice little moments like that in the game. So I really enjoy it. Theoretically, you're supposed to be able to combine 2 sets and play up to 8.
Yes,
I don't know if I would do that, but
Yeah.
you can. If people are fans of Alexander Pfister, multi-use cards, drafting games, that kind of, it's definitely worth a try. I quite like it. I've kept it. I've played it multiple times. It's just something that seems to be easy to get to the table for some reason. So I like it.
Yeah, no, it's one I definitely will keep in my bag. Like that's where it is right now, and I can pull it out in that sense, and it is easier to teach. But if I just want a little bit more, then I will pull out Oh My Goods. So that is Tybor de Baumeister or Tybor the Builder.
I'm going to wrap up with another drafting game. Some listeners may have already heard Tom talk about this because he's quite fond of it, but Bunny Kingdom from Yellow Games, designed by some random guy named Richard Garfield.
Who's that?
Who's that? And it's got art by Paul Maffeyon.
Fan?
Maffeyon?
You can say Maffeyon if it's French.
I really got to get better at this. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful in my inability to pronounce some of these names, so I apologize. Which is a shame because Paul's art's phenomenal. Bunny Kingdom. It's a drafting and kind of area control game in which you are bunnies building your kingdom, hence that title. You're going to have a board, and it's a grid. It's a lettered number grid. So you're going to have a spot on the board that's J1 and, X12 or whatever. And then as you're drafting cards, you're going to have a card that aligns to each one of those spots. So if I draft the J1 spot, I get to put a bunny on the J1 spot on the board, thereby claiming that spot. And there's no competition for that location. There's only one card per spot on the board. There's also cards that represent castles or buildings that you can play. There are other random cards that might have a little ability or direct points on them or whatever. So you're going to get dealt hands, and you just draft these cards. If I draft a card that has a spot, I get to put a bunny out. If I draft a building, I can put a building on the card, and then when I'm ready, I put the building on the board, and so on and so forth. The point is that you're building up these quote-unquote kingdoms on the board where your bunnies are. You know, bunnies that are connected above and below or side by side, they form like their own little kingdom. And there are little icons on some of the spots on the board, maybe a little mushroom or a carrot or a little tree. And these are essentially, I guess, resources, for lack of a better term. This is where it gets, we just talked about Heaven and Ale that had some convoluted scoring. I would say Bunny Kingdom has some wonkadoo scoring as well, because what happens is that these little buildings have towers on them. There's a 1-tower building, a 2-tower building, and a 3-tower building. And they're adorable. And when you put the building down, you get to put your little bunny. It's got a perfect little nest for your bunny to sit on. And isn't that adorable? The way that this game scores is, in a kingdom, for every unique resource icon, you multiply that times the number of towers in that kingdom, and that's your score. Yeah. And Mandy, you're making eyeball rolls at me, and I like, yeah. So like having 2 carrots in my kingdom, like 2 spots that have carrots, that's actually not helping me. But if I have a spot that has a carrot, a mushroom, and a tree, that's awesome.
Right.
So you get incentivized to diversify, and then you want to build all these little towers in there, right? And you want more different resources. There's also cards that let you add unique resources and stuff like that too, to kind of bump up your score. That scoring is a little odd, I gotta admit, but the gameplay is super fun. The drafting feels fun, and it's very, very quick. As the board evolves, that's very fun. The little plastic bunny meeples are adorable. These buildings that you get to put down are excellent. They're sculpted. They look so cool on the board. They are very fragile. Those towers can snap off relatively easy, which is disappointing. So it's one of those things where they look great, but maybe I wish they didn't look as great and had thicker joins so that the towers didn't break off. They're really easy to glue on. Ask me how I know. So that's definitely a detriment. And for sure, some of my friends have complained about this, and I agree with it. The board is very busy, and it's very small. You end up with a lot of stuff on this board. You've got bunnies on the board. You've got tokens on the board. You've got buildings on the board. You've got icons on the board that you have to pay attention to. You have land types that you have to pay attention to. Oh my goodness, when all of this collides, it's hard to see. It can be hard to see, and it can feel fiddly. And I'm saying what probably comes across as very negative things about the game. In spite of all of that, I still really enjoy it. It plays very, very quickly. It's very, very simple. The scoring is a bit convoluted, but once you get used to it, it goes relatively quickly. You come up with little cheats that help make it quicker to score from round to round and that kind of thing. Is this for everybody? Probably not. But ultimately, I personally quite enjoyed it. The drafting, the area control, the way that you had choices about creating separate kingdoms, big kingdoms, all that stuff. I liked it. I liked it a lot. And so that is Bunny Kingdom.
I've heard you talk about it, and I've seen you teach it to a few people, actually, that have been playing it. I know when I've seen it, I said, holy moly, that is a lot of bunny/components on the board. It was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So it's one of those games that you just would not want to walk by and knock the table, or you may have some very angry gamers on your hands.
For sure.
But it's definitely one that is definitely appealing to look at. Like, the actual art is quite nice. So it's one that I'd like to.
The art's gorgeous.
Yeah, I have never played it. I don't own it. So it's one I'd like to try. It looks very, very cute. So Bunny Kingdom, another one to add to my list to try. I'm going to see how it plays out.
And, I wouldn't call Bunny Kingdom a kid's game per se.
Right.
But why don't we go talk about a family game in All Access Gaming?
All Access Gaming.
That was probably pretty good.
All right, now it's time to take a look at a game, that anybody can play. Family, kids, new gamers, old gamers like us, haha. So this time we're going to take a look at Pickomino, designed by Carlo Rossi. Artist is Christian Fiore, and the publisher is Haba. So Pickomino, as the name might suggest, means you're getting to do some art. Not necessarily good art, but, you're drawing, so maybe you're a really good artist. So in the game, it's great because you have cards that have 3 levels of difficulty, and they also come in a variety of languages, which I loved. I thought that was great because I've played this game in French, English, and Spanish. So
go figure.
No, it's really good. Or even people who, it worked out really, really well. So you have a board, and when you look at the board, it looks really strange because you have those like squares on it, right? You're like, these come out. You're going to be drawing on those. You've got your little shield, and you decide you're going to play on, beginner, easy, medium, hard. Once, you've got your time to draw, everyone's going to draw at the same time, draw what their card states, and you want to touch all the squares on your board. If you are missing any drawing on your square on your board, that's a problem for you. You need to make sure you get that all sorted. Once time's up, and everyone's going to do the reveal, there is a card that I think is transformation cards, and it tells you which tiles in your little board you're going to be moving around. So now the picture that's so beautiful, well, it's going to be a jumbled sort of mess. And basically, your other players need to guess what your drawing is in order to obtain points. So I think it's the first to correctly guess your picture gets the points. I think I covered it, but please, you'll let me know if I've missed anything.
No, it's a very simple game.
Yeah.
But is it a party game? I guess it's a party game?
Yes and no. I don't know, because if it's a party game, it's a long party game. It's not overly long, but I mean, if you're playing at full player count.
So Pickomino to me is a game it's like concept. It's a game that you play until you're done with it. Yeah, they have points, and I think the points are like if somebody guesses your art, they get 3 points and you get 3 points. And they have this, and then if they don't guess it, then you can reassemble the drawing correctly and then you can still earn a point. But come on. I mean, the game is the entertainment is all in drawing and bemoaning your drawing skills. Like everybody's sitting around the table, oh, this is so difficult, I don't know how to draw this, right? And then trying to interpret what everybody else drew, and sometimes it's really obvious. Sometimes, oh, that's because somebody draws some element that just makes it pop, or the transformation isn't wild enough or whatever,
like my Chewbacca.
But sometimes it's really difficult. It's surprisingly difficult to decipher these mixed up drawings. And it's super entertaining to hear what people say and just to be sitting there going, it's so obvious what it is. How can you not figure this out? The boards are very clever components. It's this dry erase board with these inset panels that you can take out and obviously rotate or reset. And I think that's a delightful thing. I mean, Mandy, I can see where it would drag on, but for us, when we play it, we play a couple. We just play until we're like, okay, that was fun. Let's do something else now.
And when I say it's long, like we played right to the end, but we enjoyed our time playing it.
Gotcha.
I think that's more where I was going. The fact, like, it's not going to be a party game that's done in like 20 minutes. We actually spent the time going, completing the game because we were having a good time. And we also play on Twitter sometimes, as you've seen, and we'll say, hey, can you guess what this is? So it's kind of fun for us to involve other people in the community while we're playing, but we also have a good time with our friends who I thought would not like the game because they're like, I don't like to draw. It's not my thing. And even they admitted that they enjoyed it, and they really like the element of kind of making it more of a puzzle by mixing up the pieces and then, having people guess it. They really enjoyed that part of it. So I think there's a part of the game for everybody to like. I mean, it's fun, it's light, and it's something that you can play with any type of gamer. And I like the fact that the cards have a varying difficulty rating. So some of those ones are hard, the difficult ones.
And some of them have like terms or phrases or pop culture references. And I think in the rules it does say somewhere you can tell them like movie title, kind of charades. Like you can give them some basic category kind of hint to help the other players guess what it is.
Right.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is, I have a 5-year-old son, and bless his sweet heart, he's not quite at the advanced level of drawing skills yet. So, if you are playing with younger kids, keep that in mind that, it's a challenging enough experience if you have really basic line art skills. Like you can draw a house, let alone you throw it in front of very young kids, younger kids that, when their regular drawings are a little obscure, a little hard to interpret, and then you mix them up. Keep that in mind and just kind of keep the mood uplifting for the young ones if people aren't guessing what they drew, because we found ourselves in that situation with our youngest son that, now thankfully he thought that was hilarious. He felt like he was winning because like, oh, haha, you can't figure out what I have. So it worked out okay. But that was just one random nugget I wanted to toss in there from my experiences.
Yeah, which is good because I've only played this game with adults. So, you know, my age or older. And I've played with gamers and people who are new to gaming and they liked it. So it's nice to have a perspective for someone who has a child. So that is Pickomino. And next time when we talk about it, we may have something on the other spectrum. So today, or this podcast, it was more of a party-ish type game. We may have maybe, who knows, potentially a worker placement or something else for all access gaming. So stay tuned for that for next podcast. Let's discuss those previously discovered board game gems in Shelf Staple. All right, so we're ready for a podcast favorite. Who knew? Shelf Staple. So I feel like we haven't done this for a long time. But
it's been,
I feel it's been a while. So, and I feel people have missed it. So, like I said, I'm going to continue with my trend of fun light games because next time it's going to be crazy heavy stuff. And this time I'm going to talk about Anomia, which I think a lot of people would know. Designed by Andrew Innes, artists is Paul Lane and Peter Wacken, published by Anomia Press and Asmodee. And I believe the year is about 2010. So it's not crazy old, but it's up there. So in Anomia, it's pretty straightforward. What you're going to do in the game is you're going to have a set of cards, and you're going to draw and reveal from the center pile. Now, you want to make sure that the symbol on your card matches one of another player's card. Why do you want to make sure? It's because you need to be ready. Because on these cards, there are symbols, and then there's kind of like a topic that's underneath these symbols. And if your symbol matches another player's symbol on their card, well, you need to be the first one to shout out the answer that's the topic on their card. The thing is, once you've done that, there could be another card that's underneath that matches their symbol on their deck or somebody else's. And again, you need to be ready real quick to have a response before the other player does. There are other cards in the game that have wild symbols that can kind of change it up, which is very confusing to me. Mm-hmm. So basically, like if you have one that looks like, let's say it's an orange circle or something, now it's treated like, you know, the red triangle or something like that. I find those you have to really be careful because sometimes I'm not paying attention and then a player could just sneak in and just go in for the win. So I think that is the point of the game. Anomia is that whole before you can say the response. So I really like this game. I remember when I was first introduced to it by one of my friends, I was like, okay, card game. Hey, party game. Yay. Okay, another one, and wasn't looking forward to it. And we had a really good time playing it. Now, it was better than I expected, actually, but it was fun. I don't know. You've played this one.
I've played Anomia a ton. I have the party box, so I have like 8 decks for this darn game. And I actually have Anomia Kids. They just released an Anomia version for kids. It's a little simplified and can be played by. It basically, kids have to use the words that start with the same sound instead of fitting a certain category. Like, you know, jazz singer.
They're not good enough.
Kids might not know that. So it simplifies the categories, but it works very well. My kids love Anomia Kids. I love Anomia. It's definitely, I think, the kind of party game that may appeal to quote-unquote gamers a little bit more. The way it kind of twists your brain between having to track things and think on the fly and those symbols and all of that just works. It's not in every FLGS. They have kind of odd distribution.
Right.
I mean, it's easily available, but because of the way that they're distributed, it's not always on the shelf. So I'm really glad. I was actually delighted to see that you'd put on your list because it's nice to kind of remind people that this game is out there because it's a great one.
Yeah, so that's Anomia, and I feel like I've had a lot of Anomia tonight.
God, we got to record earlier in the day for you.
I know, right? So for those who don't know, we're on a time zone difference. So for me, it's late, but for Zan, it's like, you know, kind of early-ish. So we're working with it.
It's all relative. We're working on it. Well, my shelf staple also falls into that light zone, and it is Pickomino, or it's also known as Heck Mech. And this is a Reiner Knizia game, which I think that this is a zone where Reiner Knizia just shines sometimes in these lighter games. The art's by Doris Mateus, and I think the original publisher was Zoc Verlag, or Zoc.
I think Zoc. I think you were right the first time.
Verlag. And this is a push your luck game that uses these really nice quality domino-like tiles that have numbers and worms on it. Because this is a game where you are chickens barbecuing worms.
Did I legitimately hear that right?
Best theme ever. Yes, you did. And so what's going to happen is you have dice and you're rolling these dice and you're, you roll a bunch of threes. So you set aside the threes and then you keep on rolling until you've got all the threes that you want. And then you add up the value and you can take the tile that matches that number. So if you have a total of 25, you get to take the 25 tile. And all these tiles have a number of worms. And at the end of the game, your score is actually based on the number of worms that you've collected, not the value of the tile. So you're collecting these tiles and you actually stack them on top of each other in front of you. Because if an opponent gets the same value as your top tile, they can steal it from you.
Oh.
Yeah. There's also this rule where you have to have worms in one of your rolls. Otherwise, you blank out. And if you blank out, you have to actually turn in one of your tiles and you flip over one of the tiles in the middle, rendering it untakeable. Mm-hmm. It is a very, very simple push your luck game. It's very, very quick to play. But for a push your luck game, this is one of the better ones. This is can't stop quality stuff, but with the bonus of barbecue worms.
Barbecue worms. I can't get
It's ridiculous and hilarious, and I think it's so charming. It can definitely be played with kids. I play it with grown-ups as a filler all the time. There is an expansion called Extra Verm that isn't available in the US, unfortunately, but you can get it online pretty easily. And the Extra Verm expansion adds a ton. It adds these little wooden meeples, these little wooden characters.
I was gonna say it adds more worms.
It does. You get these little round worm tokens. Don't tease me, Mandy. It adds these special ability animals that add a great element to the game, too. So if you're playing with gamers, it's nice to add that expansion in if you grab it, because it notches it up just the right level, I think, to still keep it a filler but add a little more gameplay. Mm-hmm. Pickomino, Heckmech, if you want a filler, if you want a little quick push your luck game, if you want to play with families or new gamers, it really fits that bill as long as you're willing to barbecue some worms.
Oh my gosh, all this talk of worms and barbecuing is making me squirmy.
Sorry about that.
Squirmy wormy. All right. So those are picks for Shelf Staple. Q&A.
We love getting questions from you, and we love answering your questions on the air. Thank you, everybody who's been writing in over the past few weeks. It's about time we got back to them because we've got a little bit of a build-up here. So first up, John M. asked about apps. Because, we have our Tap the App segment and must have listened to the last episode and says, I love that there are so many board game apps and it seems like they're getting better and better. However, I really only like to play games, even online ones, against real human opponents. Don't you find it near impossible to get a game going on in some of these apps? There's stuff on online sites like Board Game Arena that have solved it in a variety of ways, but they never end up working out with some of the bigger games, right? Some of the big games that you really want to play don't end up in app form with that kind of treatment. So, how do we deal with that? And I think that's a great question. It's definitely something I pay attention to when I'm looking at apps and reviewing apps is what does that online environment look like? And without a doubt, picking up games with random opponents is very, very dicey. John mentions Potion Explosion, which is interesting. I think that's one of the better ones. And I think that your chances on some of the stuff are higher when you're looking at some of the game publishers and developers that have their own internal networks. So something like Asmodee Digital, where they have a whole network of games, or somebody like Digidice, where they have their whole proprietary backend system with user IDs that you can create friends or find online games with. But I hear what you're saying. It is tough. And without a doubt, the most success I have are in a game like Star Realms, which you can get a game going within seconds, right? On Star Realms. On Potion Explosion or these other games, I'm really talking to the people I've met online in, board game forums or just in real life, my personal friends. And I play Star Realms against my personal friends. I play Potion Explosion specifically against personal friends all the time. We've created friend accounts on the system and we just get a game going and click go. And that works out really well for me. If you're looking for those random setup games, I wish I had a solution for it. You're right. It is tough. And I also agree with you. It is more fun to play against real life opponents, even digitally. I wish there was a solution. All I can say is maybe try to get your friends to sign up to the same system so that you can get some asynchronous games going on. What about you, Mandy?
Oh, I'm weird. So I only play with my friends. I know. I live with my friends or play. Maybe this is just because video gaming is like a thing, and I just, oh my goodness. I'm always worried that it's going to get crazy, especially if there's any kind of chat there. So I generally will play.
Chat's dangerous.
Yeah, so I'll play with friends, or I'll play with like the AI if I'm playing like a solo type game, I guess. That's it. I'm weird like that. So I need to know you. And
fair enough.
Also, online sites. There are some, I do find they're getting better with what's available with the online sites that are free. Like there's Yucata. I know Board Game Arena was mentioned. And there's another one I'm missing.
Bois de Jeu.
Yeah, Bois de Jeu, which is another good one as well. So there are a few, and I think a lot of them are bringing out some of the bigger games. Well, let's move on to Jared M. And the question is, has there ever been a game where an offensive theme was the only thing that turned you off about it, or a game you really wanted to like, but you couldn't because of the theme? Yeah, there's a couple games that I have issues with the theme. I know there's the popular one that people really like. I am not a huge fan of the theme of Puerto Rico.
Sure.
I know a lot of people really love the game, but anything to do with colonialism or anything in that realm, I don't like how it's conveyed. I'm sorry. And even the gameplay for me with Puerto Rico was fine. It's not a favorite of mine. I know a lot of people like it. Theme turns me off. Not really interested in playing that again. Another game that's out now, oh yes, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of comments about this one, is the game Hate by Simon. Yeah. So I watched the video, and I'm not going to lie, Tom's impression was pretty bang on. When you start talking about burning people, nudity, and that sort of thing doesn't appeal to me. Fine. If that appeals to you, that is your thing, and that's fine. Totally fine. Not for me. I looked at that. I looked at the video. That was not a selling point for me. I am so sorry. So I could be going on a limb here. That would be one that definitely will not be something I will be looking forward to playing anytime soon, based on the theme. What about you, Suzanne?
Yeah, I think the word offensive is a troublesome word. It's a difficult word because I think actually offensive means different things to different people and what that really entails. I will say that there are themes that I struggle with. For example, I am irrationally, I understand this is completely not rational, but I am irrationally afraid of zombies. So literally, if your game has zombies, there is like a 5% chance that I will want to play that game purely because of the theme. Now, a great example of that is Dead of Winter. I want to play this game. It sounds so cool, but those zombies are just enough. I can't do it. And I know that's really, really sad. Another example is This War of Mine. The game looks interesting and it looks compelling. And I think that the game is actually doing something interesting with their messaging and the blend of messaging and mechanisms and story. But man, I'm in a headspace right now where I'm looking for fun. I'm looking for something lighter and relaxing. And that War of Mine, it was just too heavy for me. It would just hurt my heart to play it and think about, that scenario. If I immerse myself, it would just make it really painful for me. So that's a game that I chose not to back or chose not to play just because of the theme. Does it offend me? No, but it's not a game I'm personally interested in playing because of the theme. There are a lot of things. There are absolutely things that offend me. There have been some, there are games about everything out there. And because I cover crowdfunding, I see a lot of interesting games out there that I think are highly offensive. I also respect the fact that my taste is not everybody's taste.
That's right.
Just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's not for somebody. So I appreciate your question, Jared, and I'm a little in tune to the phrasing of it, and just wanted to. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
And that's it. You hit the nail on the head. Just because I am not particular of a certain theme or you are doesn't mean that somebody else isn't. We all have different tastes, and we respect that. Ronald
T asks, what game does summon awards or that type of experience the best in your opinion? Talking about combat-focused games at a skirmish scale involving tactical uses of different unit types. And also asks, what have been your favorite story-driven games, or if not specifically a read from a book experience, what gameplay has evoked the most memorable narratives? Two very different questions there. Mandy, it's interesting because I don't know if those combat-focused skirmish scale games are necessarily our type of games.
Right.
But, the two that pop to mind when you're talking about that is I've played Summon Wars. I traded my copy away a while ago. I enjoyed it. I've played the app. I like the app better for it just because it makes everything easier. But actually, my favorite in that zone is Neuroshima Hex. I love Neuroshima Hex with all those different unit types, all the different armies you can get. For some reason, the gameplay just clicks for me as you're placing units. They have the nets, all that stuff works. It feels, I think, a little more streamlined to me than something like a Summoner Wars, and I think that's why I enjoy that. The other one I really enjoy is Battle Lore. I like the fantasy theme. I know that there's, the kind of World War II themed version of as well. But Battle Lore, I think, is a great game. I really like the card-driven play as you're managing your units and attacking each other and things like that. I think it works quite well. So those would be kind of my top 2 in that zone.
Yeah. So this is actually a game type that I don't play often. When I was younger, I played with my brothers, and I kid you not, I think I'm traumatized. They were so awful to me. When I would play these types of games, they make fun of me. So I'm like, you know what? That's it. I'm never playing this type of game again.
Oh, that's a shame.
I will now that I'm older, but I haven't lately. So I'm not in a position really to answer the question, but I am familiar with Battle Lore, and I know that's quite a popular one.
Well, what about story-driven games? Because I know you've played some story-driven games.
Well, I mean, I had one in my top 10. So like Near and Far was one that I was playing recently that I really liked. Now, I'd like to get a bit farther in that because I've taught it so many times that I'm continually playing the same campaign or scenario. I'm like, oh, let's move it on. I know. Sorry, I'm complaining. But again, these types of games require time. So for me, it's just time that I never have. But Near and Far is the one that I've been playing lately.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful one. I really like time stories. I really, really, really like time stories. I like the system. I like the kind of overarching story that's slowly evolving. And I'm pretty flexible in my game taste. So the fact that there's a wide variability between the different scenarios and time stories doesn't bother me. I appreciate the puzzly ones. I appreciate the more story-driven ones. I like the ones that maybe have a little more combat and the ones that don't. All of it works for me, and I really enjoy that. And I just talked about Legacy of Dragonholt earlier in this episode. Oh my gosh,
yes.
That was amazing. And that is a little read from book experience.
So good.
So there you go.
I may need to have to get that one. It's sounding pretty good. Daniel R. Oh, this is for both of us. So my wife is an Irish diplomat and plays games with me occasionally.
Oh, wow.
Which is great. My best friend's from Ireland and amazing place. We have to move a lot and have to make new friends every time we move. Can you please walk me through hosting a game night that could work with a work/diplomat crowd? And can you walk me through hosting a game night for a casual friends crowd? Not diplomacy. We want to make friends.
Well, yeah. Don't play diplomacy. That's the first tip, right?
So when you have, I guess, maybe because I play games at work and now I know it's not a hosting session, but you kind of want to get a feeling if these are people who have played games before. Even if they haven't, it's totally fine, but then you're going to kind of narrow where you're going with it. So I always like to have, a little bit of conversation. You have snacks and stuff, for your game night, get everyone relaxed, and then potentially pull out, I start light. And then you kind of gauge from that what people's tastes are. Yeah. Hey, have you played this game before? Let's try this out and see how they like it and then go from there. But definitely leave room in between games. As a gamer, I like to just play back to back to back to back. I like to get in as many games as possible. Not when someone is potentially not a gamer or it's a different type of setting, you need to leave room for conversation. I find if you force too many games on people, it might be too much, in my opinion. But I know. Hard to believe that I just said that. But for some people, it is. So in that kind of...
No, I think that's a brilliant tip.
Yeah, I find that happens. I've seen that where people just go back and I'm like, that's just not for everybody. You got to have some conversation. That's not necessarily gaming related. And then kind of come back to the games. And then you can also have some conversation within the games. So this is where you don't want to pull out your super heavy, Euro game. It's not going to work. So lighter games are nice. And then you can kind of gauge from there what people like. Casual gamers... This, you can push it a little bit more. I'm not saying you have to stick to party games because I have friends who are casual gamers and we don't play any party games at all, actually. But we do generally tend to stick to light to medium. We don't generally tend to go too much more than that. Again, it's gauging what people like. What do you think?
I loved your tip about leaving space for conversation. That's just brilliant. And I wouldn't have thought to centralize that idea, but that's great. I mean, I think a game night with new friends is like a cocktail party or, a casual party. Exactly. You're feeling them out, etc. You can think of any number of party games or casual light games that might be engaging. I would pick games that are interactive. It's kind of like going on a first date.
Yeah.
A lot of people do a movie for a first date, and for some people that works, but you don't talk during the movie. You can talk afterwards and then you have something common to talk about. But, something that's a little more interactive is fun, I think, for a work thing as you're getting to know each other. You might want to also think about how many people you invite and making it right. Because if you have too many people and none of them know how to play games, it's going to be a bit of a scramble. If you're not playing a game altogether, who's teaching? Is everybody taken care of? Is everyone engaged? And, for both the casual or the work friend crowd, one tip is just in that scale that Mandy was talking about, but have a spectrum of games. Know what player counts that might pop up with your group. So if you have 10 people, do you have a group? Are you playing with all 10 people at the same time? Or are you breaking people up into a group of 6 and 4? What kinds of games match that? Have some games ready. Have some specific games lined up that you've chosen to do that. And, just a general party tip is do whatever you have to do to make yourself as relaxed as possible so that you can focus on your guests and pay attention to how they're feeling and what they're doing. And, of course, have lots of yummy snacks.
Oh, good snacks are always good, but just make sure, nothing that's going to get all over your games.
No Cheetos.
No Cheetos. And Daniel also asked, this is specifically for me, Daniel lived in Ottawa, so where I live, for 4 years, but is originally from Western New York, and basically has come to Canada to visit family in Ontario. Yay, Canada! And is asking if I've played different types of rummy, Michigan rummy, or Tripoli, or Ramoli, or Royal rummy, and no, I have not played it. I've just played your basic, gin rummy, and I have a friend at work who loves this game, Joker Rummy. I think they sell it at Toys R Us or something, but I gotta tell you, it's a lot of fun. I'm terrible at it, but it's really good. That's basic. So that is a great question. I've not heard of it, but maybe it is. And it could be depending on what part of Canada you're in. So sometimes what is happening in the West is not always happening in the East. So thanks for sharing that, though. And if we ever meet at a con, you can definitely teach me these different versions of Rummy. If anybody else has questions when we do our next Q&A, send them to SuzanneandMandy@gmail.com. Oh, don't forget, Mandy with an I.
Thank you, everybody. That's going to do it for this episode. It's always wonderful having you join us. Next episode 540, Tom and Eric will be back and talking about their favorite games from 15 years ago. And Jeff will be wrapping up his AI trilogy. Until next time.
See you next time. This episode was sponsored by Codenames Marvel. Now, the hit social word game has landed in the Marvel Universe. In the Marvel edition of Codenames, it's a battle between Team S.H.I.E.L.D. and Team Hydra to see who can identify their team's asset cards first. Test your knowledge and strategic clue-giving skills as you help your team guess characters and items from the comic like Guardians of the Galaxy, The Avengers, Thor, Spider-Man, and more. Whether you are guessing or giving the clues, the Marvel edition of Codenames is a must for Marvel and Codenames fans everywhere. Players 2 to 10 plus, and ages 9 plus. Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, Rob Searing, and Jeff Raidmaker. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So now it's that time again, 2 truths and a lie. So I'm going to start. My number 1 was I met Alice Cooper. Number 2, my favorite movie is Singing in the Rain. And number 3, I'm a big fan of hard metal music. If you guessed I'm a big fan of hard metal music as the lie, you would be correct. It is probably the one type of music that I'm not crazy about. I don't hate it, just not my favorite. I did actually meet Alice Cooper. I was working in retail and makeup at the time, and it was quite hilarious. Someone came up to him and was like, "Are you Alice Cooper?" And he responds with, "I feel like Alice Cooper." I was legitimately playing with it. It was hilarious. Very nice man. We had a great conversation.
Did you do his makeup?
I did not. He was there looking all normal and regular, not with the makeup. And so I think he was taking a break. And Singing in the Rain is my absolute favorite movie. And I could watch that over and over again. It is fantastic. So
I've
what about you?
Never seen it. I've only seen clips. I've only seen scenes.
Oh, well, we're going to have to make you watch that movie. It is fantastic.
We'll see. All right. From last episode, my 2 truths and a lie. I wrote a paper about Xena Warrior Princess in college. I wrote a paper about the Teletubbies in college. I actually wrote a paper in college about the Teletubbies, not a paper about the Teletubbies attending college.
Okay.
Or in college, I wrote a paper about the A-Team.
Oh.
And the lie was that I wrote a paper about the A-Team. While I was a huge fan of the A-Team, I did not manage to write a paper about them. But I did a lot of media studies in college. And absolutely, I wrote a full, 20-page paper about Xena Warrior Princess and talked about the history of women in television. And then I did a deep dive into children's television. And so I researched shows like Teletubbies and Blue's Clues and all these other things and ended up writing a big old paper about that.
So can you do the Xena call?
No.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I'm not giving you that sound bite. No.
Next time. So, 2 truths and a lie for this week. I'm left-handed. I own an Xbox. And I still write in cursive. Ooh, exciting stuff there.
I know they don't teach cursive a lot anymore, but okay. And mine are, I still own all of my old Palm Pilots. I still own all of my old PlayStation consoles, and I still own all of my old Game Boys.
There you have it. Good luck.